Alright, we're back. And we got another video for Fire Emblem Heroes today. So yesterday I put out a top 10 overall units in the game tier list, and one of the comments down here by Jannywolt says, maybe a demote ranking would also be quite interesting, considering the best grails and demoted banner units of Book 8, since some of them have preference weapons, and some have a really good stat spread, and some bring fodder with them. Maybe you need to, or with them you need maybe for the meta, would love something like this. Okay, so Jannywolt wants essentially free-to-play units, grail units, and demoted 3-star and 4-star units as a top 10 tier list, so who am I to deny the fans what they want? So I went ahead and I at least sorted out the most standout Grand Hero Battle and Tempest Trial units, and there's actually no 3-star and 4-star regular pool demotes in here. Not because I didn't want to put them in here, but after going over like all the weapons and refines and all that stuff, I actually didn't feel like any of them would have made the cut for a top 10. So that's more Insys's fault than my fault if you don't see any 3-star and 4-star demotes in here. We're of course not counting the special 4-star seasonal demotes that are on the seasonal banners, like the Summer Claude, for example, or Baby Marth and things like that. Those guys are kind of gacha exclusive. They're not exactly like demote free-to-play friendly. So this is what we're going for here, and this is the actual top 10. We have them in the S tier, and then below here we have like just a couple of other units that I was debating whether or not I would have them on the list. So our top 10 here, we have Glenn, we've got Fallen Lloyd, we have New Year Kana, we have Valadar, we have Arion, we've got Ashnard, we have Gail, we've got the Valentine Vigard, we've got Ninja Saizo, and then finally we have Summer Male Shez. So this is my overall top 10 for free-to-play, demote, and 3-star and 4-star units in the game, and I think a couple of these are definitely like not up for debate. So Glenn, for example, Fallen Lloyd, New Year Kana, Valadar, Arion, and I would say Ashnard as well. These are, I think, go without saying, like no one's going to argue them being up here or not. And then we get a little bit into a gray area with the next 4. I mean, Summer Shez is probably solid enough now, especially with some of the new skills that he has access to, that I think he's probably not up for debate. Gail is essentially Ashnard after his refine. They have like some minute differences between them, but they're pretty much similar units in both playstyle and like how you would want to build them. And then Vigard, the reason why I have Vigard in here is because he's basically just like a free-to-play Brave Edelgard. You're free to give him like any of the good axes that we have access to. His own axe is pretty good. You could give him Arcane Threma. You could give him, what was the axe that Summer Dedu had? I can't remember the name of that one, but it gives you a lot of defense. It gives you like plus 20 defense and attack. So that could be a solid weapon for him too. He just wants to sit his ass there and near save tank for the rest of the team. And considering that all of the best player phase Gale Forcers, at least melee types right now for Aether Raids, happen to be Lances, like Winter Edelgard, Summer Sharena, things like that, he actually has color advantage on them, and he can fill the same role as Brave Edelgard with better stats and possibly even a better weapon, depending on how you want to look at it. So I think he's at least good enough for the S tier, but he's probably the most debatable thing in here. And then Ninja Saizo is just like a God Lance unit. He's going to run the same, like, Lagu's Friend, Breath of Life 4 build that most of these God units are running, but he doesn't really offer much support. A lot of these, like the best, like super best units in here are giving a lot of team support. So Glenn, for example, Fallen Lloyd, Kana, Valadar, Arion, and I guess Ashnard and Gail by extension, they're all doing a crap load of support for the rest of your teammates. So just by having them on the map, your other teammates are going to be doing a lot better, and I think that's pretty important for free-to-play units to be able to do, as opposed to, like, running these, like, other units that are trying to steal the show. Like, Vigard, he is reliant only on his own stats. Same with Saizo, and then Summer Shez as well. So, like, this is where I would say you could start arguing some of these other units making it into top 10. So, Reeve is one of the closest ones to making it in. He does the stall support where he's debuffing the enemies by -5 to all stats. Then inflicting stall as well, which, I mean, stall is one of the best debuff effects you can have right now, because +1 movement is so strong. Nemesis's refine is actually pretty solid, so he was very close to making it in as well, but I ended up favoring Saizo over him. Although, I mean, you could still interchange both of them if you wanted to. It's up to you. And then Pon was possibly going to make it in as well, but he doesn't get even attack wave N like Shez does, and then he doesn't get Gambit 4 either. So a lot of the good Brave attacking skills that give a lot of true damage, he doesn't have access to, unfortunately, and Shez does. So for your Brave attack DPS, I have Shez a little above him. Also, Shez can do a lot more team supporty things with flyer movement, giving him access to Soaring Echo and stuff like that. So Pon is pretty good, but he's just not good enough to make top 10. And then here we have a row of a bunch of supporting units that are doing, like, they're granting support effects or debuff effects to the opponent or your allies. For example, George, his refine is pretty stacked in terms of support. He essentially does an attack and defense 10-point stat swing for your allies that are in 4 spaces of him. And then he also does Hexblade support and attack and speed up 6 to allies in 2 spaces. So they went all in with this guy going for support, and I think that's a good thing. Iago has the, like, flip-flop even number turn, odd number turn debuff. Then he also has odd and even turn buffs now for your team after his refine. So he could be an interesting unit, but he's just not as consistent, considering that the odd and even turn thing is kind of wonky. Zephyia also has a lot of debuff potential. She does Sabotage and I think Speed and Res -7 to the nearest foe in 5 spaces, and then it chains to enemies in 2 spaces. So pretty solid debuff effect, and then she's got good combat potential as well. Also a flyer, so she gets a ton of good flyer support. But compared to the melee flyers, I think they're just a little better. And then we have Fargus as well. Fargus could be a possible option. He's pretty solid for Arena. He scores very good, and then he also gives warping support to allies in 3 spaces. Pretty helpful for your armored units in Arena mode. Like if you're running Vigard or like any of those other high-scoring armor-type units, that could be very helpful there. But his combat is just okay. He's got tempo built into his weapon, but nothing too crazy. And then Mauvier also gives Hexblade support, and then he gives, I think it was attack and defense up 6. And then he might give something else too. He might give like guaranteed follow-up or blocking of enemy follow-ups, something like that. And then his combat is okay as well. He's got a lot of DR and things like that. But again, I would still say like not quite enough to be in top 10. And then these are just like units that crossed my mind for some reason or another, but ended up not having enough tools to work with to compete with these higher tier options here. So now we're actually going to take a look at some builds here. I'm not touting any of these builds as definitive, like this is the very best build to give to this unit, but just to show you guys an example of what some of these top 10 units are capable of. So Glenn, I did a builds video for him the other day. He just recently came out, but like his weapon is doing, what does he get? Like 20% of his defense at the start of combat as true damage reduction. Then he also decreases the enemy's attack and defense by 15% of his defense. So basically just stack the hell out of his defense, and then he's going to be able to debuff the crap out of the enemies, and he can also provide a lot of support. Wyvern Rift is pretty clutch on him, of course, because it's essentially giving him plus 20 speed that the enemies need to overcome to get a double attack on him, which is not going to be very common. Like, you look at this guy's speed right now. He's at 49 speed. I have barely given him any speed investment. I gave him the super boon on speed just for this example. But even not giving him that, you could just go plus attack, right? And then he's still sitting at what? 46 speed plus 20, which is essentially 66 speed. Then he's got speed rain snap. So let's take a look at the fastest unit on here. I think that would be Summer Male Shez. He's the fastest, like, plus 10 fully invested unit on this list. He's only got 63 speed, so that wouldn't be enough to double this guy through Wyvern Rift. And it also stacks with effects like Frozen from Summer Hareed. So this is a very strong effect that I think people are not really on the radar to at the moment, like how effective this ability is. And then if you're not getting hit by 2 attacks, that's also very effective for tanks because they have 1 less attack to worry about. So things like that, very good. And then, of course, as I said before, movement support. He's got Soaring Echo and Rain Snap, so very good unit there. Then we have Fallen Lloyd. Of course, this build, you give this build to any infantry unit and they're going to cook. So, Lagoo's Friend, Breath of Life 4, Godlike Reflexes, Distant Bonus Doubler. And now with the advent of Null C Disrupt E, you're not giving up anything by having Lagoo's Friend anymore. So, you just counterattack everything without any issues whatsoever. This guy also scores really high for Arena. and his weapon is very good for Arena as well. He does speed and defense -7 to the enemies. Then he also gives your whole team foe penalty doubler as well. So pretty good stuff there. Kana is also a really good unit for Arena. So we've got an Arena build here for her. Attack and res ploy 3, debuffing the enemies, and then gives the middle finger to Legendary Robin. High Dragon Wall stops enemies from warping in with range type units. We got the Arcane Lumera weapon. We've got Dragon's Roar there. And then, again, Null Sea Disrupt E with this encounter. She can tank ranged threats pretty decently with the good res, but you definitely want to keep her away from melee with a pitiful 28 defense there. But the idea would be that Kana is your distant counter dragon unit, and then Lloyd would be your distant counter melee unit. I have bonus doubler 3 here as the seal on him, but if you're running him in Arena, you probably want to go distant counter melee. So the idea would be to combo him with Kana. She is doing attack and res ploy 3 for attack and res -7. And then this dude's weapon does speed and defense -7. So all stats -7 to the enemy with foe penalty doubler, with high dragon wall for warp bubble. So your Arena team is not going to be having any easier possible time than with these two on it. And also scoring very good. All right, then we got Valadar, who is another one of these DPS options, but he could also double up as a solid defender with Lagoo's Friend and Close Bonus Doubler, because he actually has very viable defenses. Like, his res and defense are pretty good. His HP is pretty good, too. And then his weapon is doing a massive debuff to the enemy. He does Panic and Discord. Then he also does defense and res -6. Combo that with attack and speed ploy 3. Then you're doing exposure and ploy. Also attack and speed -7. So debuffing the literal hell out of the enemies, and then you just blow them up with the amount of true damage his weapon gets. Flare can heal, and then it also does some decent damage based on the enemy's res, but he's already going to hit hard enough between exposure and then his weapon having power-ups based on enemy debuffs. And Lagoo's Friend, of course, lets you ramp into Flare so he can just hit the enemies right away with that. If you've got cooldown support on the team, that could really help him out as well, because his weapon doesn't have -1 special trigger, and that's a good thing because it lets us use Lagoo's Friend and Flare together. But in order to, like, get the Flare on the initial hit, you would want to have, like, someone on the team with pulse support, like Nita Valir or Asker or someone like that. All right, and then we have Arion, who is the king of movement support. This is, like, more so of an experimental build than any of the other ones we're looking at, but Wyvern Rift, again, like I said with Glenn, it works out pretty good. This guy effectively has 58 speed with this, so pretty nuts. And then I've got attack and speed excel on him. You would probably want to give him attack and defense excel, but that doesn't exist at the moment, so just keep that in mind. But it's still giving a shitload of true DR when you initiate with that, so very good stuff there. And then the idea here is that he's the king of movement support. He's giving charge to all flyers. Then he's also giving Soaring Echo and +1 movement with Rain Snap. So no other flying unit in the game has the amounts of warping and movement support that this guy does. So that's very relevant. He can do a lot of roles. He can be a good Gale Force option if you want. He could be like a spot tank unit. He can do so many different things. So this guy is pretty good. Also, the debuff effect on his weapon is in combat. Or not debuff. He gets 15% of his defense in combat as... what is it? I think it's true damage that he deals to the enemy. So, being in combat like that, like a lot of these other Wyvern units we're looking at, a lot of their stuff is at the start of turn defense, whereas this guy is in combat defense. So, a bit of an edge, and can lead to him getting a lot of crazy amounts of damage. Alright, Summerz, I mean, we have Summerz pulled up. We might as well look at him right now. So, his weapon aged really good. It's a brave attacking weapon with +5 speed and then acceleration on hit. And Canto Rem +1, which, with the advent of the Celica ring, is pretty bananas. Look at the amount of true damage we're getting on this guy. Gambit 4, even attack wave N, and then we got Deathblow Echo, Blade Session. Just a crazy amount of damage that this guy is going to deal. If you can dance him to get Firestorm Dance support and get the instant Desperation, it's probably going to be lights out for whoever he hits. And then the Miracle with the ramping allows him to live just any hit the enemies do. So, yeah, this guy aged really good as a DPS option, especially with some of the new skills we're getting. Okay, we have Ashnard as well. This guy is a debuff monster. You just have him stand his ass there and debuff the enemies. I went for Breath of Life 4 on this example because he's already supporting the team. Might as well support even more with Breath of Life. But Rain Snap works out as well, so it's not really like one or the other. Just like pick whichever one you like better. Gambit 4 on him instead of Wyvern Rift because, I don't know, I feel like I like Gambit 4 on him in particular a little bit more. Arion and Glenn are able to stack their speed a bit higher than Ashnard, so Wyvern Rift works out a little better for them than it does on him. But Gambit 4 is still pretty solid. And then Squad Ace BX3, I think, gives defense and res up 3 and HP up 5, so we're going for that. The reason why we're building res on him instead of like defense and attack is because Hexblade is becoming more common, so you don't want enemies to just like crush your res. So defense and res would be the way to go. All right, Gail over here, again, building defense and res. His res is a little bit less than Ashnard's, but it's like still solid enough. He nullifies his debuffs to attack and defense, so close defense 4, nullifying enemy buffs to attack is pretty solid. Whereas Ashnard nullifies the enemy's bonuses to attack and defense, so running Clash 4 on him to nullify his attack and defense penalties makes the most sense. So they've got a couple of opposites like Gail and Ashnard, but for the most part they do the same stuff. All right, then like I said, Valentine Vigard, who is essentially budget Brave Edelgard, pretty much, but in some ways he can actually be better than her. So, because like it's easier to get him to plus 10, and then his stat line is actually better. So as weapons, inheritable ones start to get better, he's just going to age way better than Edelgard. So yeah, this guy, just because his axe is a really nice inheritable option, don't use him as like needless fodder unless you really have a plan for that devoted axe, because I think he's a pretty solid Aether Raid's defense, near save armor. And then finally, we've got the Ninja Saizo, who's just running the same build as all these god units, as I said. There are a couple of other units you could have slided in on my top 10 as opposed to him, but I felt like overall he's just like doing enough to warrant being in here. So we've got the Arcane Lewin, got like reflexes, and then the rest is history. Incited over Breath of Life 4 just to show off a different skill, because we had Breath of Life on Fallen Lloyd already. So there you guys go. That is my top 10 for the free-to-play Grand Hero Battle and Tempest Trial units, essentially. Although I did want to include 3- and 4-star banner demotes, but there just weren't any that were good enough to make the cut. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. This is your boy Tacho signing out. So take care, fellas, and I'll catch y'all again on the flip side.